When we think of people who support the hijab, most of us picture empathetic liberals who support the inclusion of Muslim women, anti-Islamophobes who are fighting for freedom of religious belief. And finally, we picture pious hijabis who are breaking down social norms and rising above prejudice. So, in light of all of this heartfelt activism, I am here to make the case that supporting the hijab is not only hypocritical, but immoral and frankly, disgusting. Granted, these are very bold claims, but they are ones I can fully substantiate. To cut through the fascism and hypocrisy, to better see the face behind the 300 million women that wear the hijab, we're going to first get familiar with this group, the A-team of Islamic extremism. The same team who employed the dirtiest marketing tricks you can fathom to turn the hijab from being worn by only a few thousand people in the 19th century into the global phenomenon that it is today. But first, let's talk about Egypt. The first documented source of the headscarf was in the time of the Assyrian Empire, where it was used to symbolize status. Women in the higher class sported veils, and if women from lower classes were spotted wearing the veil, they were beaten by order of the law with 50 lashes. So we are off to a riveting start. Thousands of years later, in 1939, an Egyptian Islamic organization by the name of the Muslim Brotherhood, which was led by an anti-Semite called Hassan Banna, attempted to popularize the idea of the Islamization of Egypt. Their goal was to hold office in Egypt and turn it into an Islamic nation. The Brotherhood's first political campaign was focused on the premise that the Islamization of Egypt only begins when women are veiled. In essence, they wanted the veil to be ordered by law, a political move they thought would help them reach enough public approval to run for office. Fortunately, the Muslim Brotherhood's decade-long campaign to cover women failed. This is the late Egyptian president Jamal Abdel Nasser mocking the Muslim Brotherhood for their attempts to convince him to quote-unquote veil the Egyptian woman. No one wanted the veil or felt a need for it. Heck, even Hassan Banna's wife and daughter didn't wear the hijab, nor did the girls who attended lectures at the oldest and biggest Islamic university in the world, Al-Azhar. However, the failure of the Muslim Brotherhood's campaign was short-lived because of Iran. In 1979, Ruhollah Khomeini was elected as president of Iran. Remember, this is the same man who went on public radio broadcasts and ordered the assassination of an atheist writer from Iraq. India? Kinda makes sense though, because in fascist countries in the Middle East, with great power comes great oppression. So, what was the first thing that Khomeini did when he came to power? Well, he followed the exact same Islamization of women strategy that didn't work in Egypt. Khomeini, however, spared no expense to make sure that his Islamization campaign could never fail. So, to ensure that women wore the veil, he added legislation, and I'm not joking here, that any woman that does not wear a veil be punished with 74 lashes by law. That makes me think, perhaps I treated you too harshly. Or did I? Khomeini's legislative move quickly erected the public persona that Muslim states need to enforce the veiling of women. And naturally, the Muslim Brotherhood back in Egypt got a raging hard on. This time around, however, instead of trying to use the law to enforce the hijab, the new and approved Muslim Brotherhood launched one of the grossest gaslighting campaigns in human history. And this time, they succeeded. There's this very interesting marketing trick called the mere exposure effect. You see it with brands like Coca-Cola when they shove their logo in every movie, billboard, advertisement, and global sporting event. It's called the mere exposure effect because our brain's subconscious works in a way that if any given idea, brand, or public figure is presented to you enough times, its likability increases merely because you were exposed to it. And the Muslim Brotherhood had enough oil money to finance a huge marketing campaign that made sure that every girl in the Middle East was exposed to their message. They passed out cassettes, flyers, went on TV sets, just about everything they can think of, and boom, history's most disgusting marketing campaign began to take shape. Speaking of disgusting, here are some of their most interesting marketing headlines. See if you can find the pattern.
A woman is like a lollipop. It has to be covered so flies don't ruin it. Cover yourself, sister. Dear Muslim sister, why do you want to be like the naked Westerners and prostitutes? Dear sister, why do you want to take your clothes off and show your decorative and curvy bits to men? Why do you want to walk around naked in the streets? Sister, why do you want to follow in the footsteps of the devil? Do you want to burn in hell?
Essentially, here's the narrative they wanted to propagate. Following this campaign, a new slur started going viral and launched a nationwide verbal assault epidemic. The word Sharmuta. Its direct English translation is slut, and it is used to describe women who are asking for it, if you know what I mean. This slur is pronounced the exact same way across most Arabic dialects. This meant that the Muslim Brotherhood's messaging had had an even wider audience. It is no understatement to say that the Middle East is the cradle of patriarchy. And so, naturally, whether they agreed with the narrative employed in this campaign or not, almost all Arab women stopped walking down in the streets with their hair out, in fear of being verbally or physically assaulted. And so, because of this deplorable gaslighting campaign, the hijab turned from being sported by a tiny Bedouin minority in excluded countrysides to a worldwide phenomenon. 300 million women, protected from feeling a cool breeze of air go through their hair, morphed into norm-abiding zombies with moist headscarves, hiding their true nature because they don't want to be perceived as prostitutes, but as good Muslims. Speaking of wearing costumes to please the crowd, let's talk about people who support the hijab. A few weeks ago, I was scrolling through Reddit and saw this post, which reminded me of the increasingly positive trend of shutting down Christians who slut-shame people like Taylor Swift, for example. Then I realized another thing. When it comes to atheists criticizing people who support and uphold the hijab, this same positive trend is nowhere to be found, and people who criticize the hijab are labeled as anti-religious, segregated, nosy bigots. This shows the true nature of people who just want to put on a show without actually digging in and trying to understand the face behind the veil. And while I am sure that there is no ill intent from leftists who support the hijab, knowing what I know now, I can't help but see this group of people as uncritical hypocrites who parade themselves as liberators, as righteous social justice warriors, and in their outspoken cries for the inclusivity of the hijab, end up fueling one of the most pervasive and harmful phenomena that exists in our time, the phenomenon of women celebrating their chains. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not against hijabis. My mom is a hijabi. I'm against the hijab and what it stands for. A tool people like this created to control their women, to cover them up like some coveted artifact. I'll leave you with the images of my heroes, the true liberators, the people who had the courage to stop pretending that being manipulated is a preference. Unveiled, ex-Muslim women.
Show you what we're seeing. There's a woman, you see, standing in a busy street without her headscarf, waving a white shawl. This is apparently part of a social media campaign using the hashtag White Wednesday.
تمام کسایی که برای صلح، آزادی و برابری و کرامت انسانی فعالیت میکنن رو دستگیر کنن.
It is always possible to wake someone who is asleep, but no amount of noise will wake someone who is pretending to be asleep. Now that you know what the hijab really means, don't you think that it's about time we all stop pretending?